Shalom friends, this is Eliyahu Shear from Chesed Ve'emet, www.lovingkindness.co, and we're looking today at the Shaarei Kedushah written by Rabbi Chaim Vital. Rabbi Chaim Vital was the pupil of the Ari, the holy Ari, the great Kabbalist who lived in the 16th century, and he was his prime student. And the Shaarei Kedushah is really all a book about how to attain levels of holiness, to attach oneself to God. Everybody knows today, everybody is out there wanting something spiritual. One wants to feel connected to God. There are all sorts of groups that come up in the world with people striving to attach themselves to this spiritual source of life that exists. And many people, for example, today consider Kabbalah to be this idea of cleaving to God. Well, if one wants to succeed in learning how to cleave to God, the Shaarei Kedushah is by far one of the most powerful books that can be studied. It is small in quantity, but it is great in quality. It gives a person the full spectrum of what he needs to do in order to refine himself so that he'll be in a fitting state to cleave to God, to godliness, and to God himself. Now, the first section is going to introduce us into this concept of what we need to do to begin our journey. If you've listened to the introduction, which I hope that you've done, which is recorded on my YouTube channel, please listen to it before this Shear because it gives a great outline into how this book works. And in our first chapter, we're going to get straight into this idea of how to begin the process of acquiring holiness. Those people that want to attach themselves to God in the fullest extent possible of what we're able to do, what we can achieve, this mystical connection, have to know that really God wants something from us in order to become closer to Him. It's a 50-50 deal, so to speak. God is there and He's waiting for us to cleave to Him. And in return, we must put the effort in order to do what's required so that we can cleave to God. It's by no means an easy task to perform. It is in depth and it is a lifetime work to achieve this goal. And if one is really sincere, one has to be prepared to put in the effort to give oneself over to what is required of one in this world. Let us not forget at the same time that what we're learning about here is something that pertains to what we would call Judaism. Obviously, because Rabbi Chaim Vital is handing over this book to the Jewish people. But we must remember at the same time that even for a non-Jew who wishes to come close to God, he also has the opportunity, provided he behaves in the way that God wants him to as well. And let us not forget the great teaching from Eliyahu, who says in the Tanakh Devei Eliyahu that he bears heaven and earth to be witness that whether we're talking about a person who is a man or a woman, a free man or a slave, a Jew or a non-Jew, everybody can acquire this level of Ruach Hakodesh, of holiness and connection to God. And really all it depends upon is his deeds. And so therefore when a person behaves in the correct way, and Rabbi Chaim Vital is going to teach us what that way is, he has the opportunity to cleave to God, to experience spirituality, divinity. Likewise, the non-Jew has that option as well. He has that opportunity also, provided he does what is required of him. Although, as we're going to see, Rabbi Chaim Vital is going to introduce us to the practical observance of the Mitzvot. And maybe the non-Jew doesn't have 613 Mitzvot to perform, but at the very least, he has 7 Mitzvot which he is required to perform. And when he performs these Mitzvot in the way that he's required to perform them, and he does those deeds as he should, he will be no less entitled to achieve these levels of holiness and attachment to God. Of course, our subject is dealing with the Jew and his obligations to God. But if there are any people who are listening to this channel, to this video, and they're not Jewish, let them enjoy the words for what they are. And let them consider their own duties with regards to the 7 mitzvot of Bnei Noach, so that if they are prepared to put in the effort to fulfill these mitzvot, these commandments from God, which the entire world is commanded to perform, that they too will be deserving of this ability to feel and experience what it is like to cleave to God to the degrees that we are able to in a physical body. Hachelek harishon. We begin over here, the first section. Hashar harishon bebir habekam al yedei chatos adam beinyan mitzvos. So we're talking about the first gate, which is explaining the defect that through a person's sins that he does with regards to the mitzvot. What type of sins does a person do in terms of his mitzvot? Says Rabbi Chaim Vital, Askilecha v'orecha kama godla ra'as adam. I'm going to enlighten you, and I'm going to give you some light of just how great is the bad for a person when he does ba'asoiso achas mikol mitzvos Hashem shesam mitzvos asher lo ta'asena. When he does one of the mitzvahs of God, which include the 365 mitzvahs which he may not do, or when he holds himself back from fulfilling one of the 248 positive mitzvahs that a person is commanded to do them. So Rabbi Chaim Vital begins straight out. He doesn't hold back his punches. If a person wants to develop himself to be a holy person, to cleave to God, to experience divinity, to enter into these spiritual realms which the Torah speaks about, let's call it the Merkava even, the divine chariot, where a person is privy, should he reach those levels, to experience various godly revelations, as Rabbi Chaim Vital already laid out for us in the introduction to this work, and as he's going to discuss in greater detail as we progress, and certainly when we get to the end of chapter 3 and of course chapter 4, which details these things in great detail. So he doesn't hold back any punches. He says, if you want to get to this level of Kedusha that we're talking about, of this Ruach Hakodesh, of this divine inspiration, of this Merkava, I'm going to point out to you, says Rabbi Chaim Vital, the danger, the defect, the problem that will occur to a person if he's not careful and he breaks one of the 365 negative mitzvot, or if he refrains from performing one of the 248 positive mitzvot. Now the Torah is composed of 613 mitzvot, the Tariag mitzvot. Within them there are 365 negative mitzvot, and of course they branch out into thousands upon thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of mitzvot. And then there are also 248 positive mitzvot, which of course also branch out into thousands upon thousands upon thousands and tens of thousands of mitzvot. But still, in the actual root, there are 365 negative shesa mitzvahs, lo ta'aseh, negative mitzvot, and remak mitzvahs aseh, 248 positive mitzvahs. If a person wants to refine himself and prepare himself to cleave to God, he's got to be absolutely in control of himself in terms of the fulfillment of all of these mitzvahs. When he performs one of the 365 negative mitzvot that he's not supposed to do, he will cause a blemish upon himself which will prevent him from connecting to God. I mean, we can think about that logically. If a person doesn't eat healthily and his body doesn't function correctly, his body will not function to the optimum. And he'll go see a dietitian, and he'll say to the dietitian, why is it that I can't win the 100-meter sprint? And the fellow is highly overweight. And the dietitian points out to him, look, you're overweight. He says, well, everybody needs to eat, and here I am, and I'm eating, and I seem to be doing just fine. Why can't I run as fast as everybody else? The dietitian points out, look, first you have to lose some weight. So the person concerned eventually loses some weight. And then later on he finds out that he still can't win the race. He still can't break the world record. The dietitian points out that even with the food that he's eating, he's still eating the wrong food. The food that's going into his body is clogging up certain things in his body, which is preventing him from being able to act to his optimum, to run as fast as he can. He's eating the wrong foods, and the wrong foods are immobilizing him from his ability to achieve what he could achieve if only he ate the right foods. Eat lighter foods. Don't make your body so heavy, the dietitian says to him. One who understands that will understand that the moment he gets his diet right, his body will feel more alive. And all of a sudden he'll be able to do more, and he'll be able to run faster. He'll be able to win the race. Now, so too when a person is trying to connect to God, If he blemishes himself in some way by performing one of the 365 negative mitzvahs, which he shouldn't be doing, thou shalt not, you shall not do it, and yet he went ahead and he did it in any case, he will blemish a part of his system, which will blacken out and prevent him from being able to connect to God. Likewise, a person who does not perform one of the 248 positive mitzvahs is lacking something in his body that without it will prevent him from connecting to God. So we say, for example, this would be similar to our example of the person again who wants to win the race. He wants to get the world record for the fastest runner. And the dietitian tells him, look, you need to eat this particular food to give you these particular vitamins and to give you the strength that you need in your body so that you'll be able to run as fast as you possibly can. Now, when the person eats correctly, his body will act to its optimum and he'll be able to be successful, and perhaps he'll even win that race. But if there are certain crucial things that the body needs, vitamins, irons, and healthy products inside the blood to keep him healthy, and he refuses to have those particular products, then his body will not act to the optimum. It will not reach its optimum. He might feel healthy, he might feel great, he might feel things are okay, but the dietitian will tell him different. If he's striving for the highest of goals, he's going to have to refine his body in the best possible manner. He needs to make sure not to blemish the body with foodstuffs that are going to cause problems in the body, and he has to be careful to eat those things that are going to be healthiest to the body, because when he puts those things in, his body will function correctly. When he lacks those things, his body is not going to reach its optimum, and it will not be able to behave as he wants it to behave. When a person wants to connect with God, he has to be careful. There are 365 negative mitzvot. He has to be careful to refrain so that he shouldn't blemish in performing one of those things that he shouldn't do. If he does, he will cause a defect in his system and he'll be unable to connect with Hashem. There'll be a darkness, a blackness. There'll be a defect, a pagam. On the other hand, if he is not performing all the 248 positive mitzvahs, he too will be lacking something that will give him the ability to move forwards and connect with Hashem as he really wanted to do in the first place. Noida el Baale Mada. Now it's known to these people who have some knowledge, let's call them. It means to say that people who think about life, they think about life a little bit deeper than the average person might come to think. Ki guf ha'adam einenu ha'adam atzmo mitzad haguf. That the body of a person is not the person himself from the side of his body. Ki ze nikra. Because this is called basar ha'adam. This is called a person's flesh. The flesh of a person. It's interesting to note when people ask others, can you point to yourself? They say. So the person points his finger towards his chest. He never points his finger in a normal sense towards even his head. He certainly doesn't point it towards his baby toe, to his calf, to his thigh, or any other part of the body. Interesting. He points towards the center of his body. Now, he's obviously not referring to his chest, much like he wouldn't be referring to his thigh or his baby toe. He's pointing to something which lies within himself, and that's what he's trying to say to you. When you tell the fellow, look, point to yourself, and he points in that direction, he's pointing to a point, he's pointing to a place inside his body that is his essence, and he knows it. The essence of the person is not the body. The essence of the person is his soul that rests inside the body. Kamoshe Kosov. And if you want to know, if you want a source to back you up in the Torah itself, go to the book of Eov, the book of Job, Perek Yud, Pasuk Yud Aleph, chapter 10, verse 11. Or ubasar tal bisheni, says Job, talking to God. Job was afflicted with all sorts of afflictions. God was testing him. It's a great book to read. Anybody who wants to understand the difficulties that a person can go through in life, which is really what we all go through to different degrees, is recommended that they read this book of Job. Because Job is really the prime example of somebody who suffers really for no reason whatsoever, apparently. and yet he goes through tremendous pains and afflictions until eventually things at the end work out okay after a very traumatic period of his life. And Job says to God, Oru basar talbisheni, skin and flesh you have clothed me with. Uva atzmos vegidim tsochecheni, and with bones and sinews you have covered me. Job is telling God, he's saying over, that he himself is a soul of some kind, whatever that is. And the soul, unfortunately, has been covered with this flesh and this meat, this skin and the flesh that surrounds him, and the bones and the sinews. And of course, this is what's causing him all of the pain. But that's not him. He is the man inside the body. For Odkasiv, it's also written a verse in Shemot, in the book of Exodus, in Perek Lamed, Pasuk Lamed Beis, chapter 30, verse 32. Al baso adam lo yisach. On a person's flesh there should not be spread. The pasuk is referring to the placing of various things on the flesh, and over there again we see that it shouldn't be placed on the flesh of man. Basar adam nimtza. So we see from this ha'adam hu apnimios, that the person is what's inside. Aval haguf hu inen levush echad. But the body is just the matter of one garment. Titlabesh bo nefesh asichlis. And inside it, the intellectual soul is enclosed in it. Ashehi adam atzmo. This is the person himself. Ba'odo b'olam hazeh, when he's in this world. When a person is in this world, it's a physical world, he needs a physical garment to live in. Just like people wear different garments depending on their role in life, to show who they are and what they're doing, so too the soul requires its own garment. So for example, a policeman will wear police garments, and he needs to wear it. He might need a bulletproof vest, for example, or he might need a special police hat and police uniform so that other people will recognize that he is a policeman. And they won't, if he pulls out a gun all of a sudden, they'll realize this is a fellow who is supposed to be upholding the law and protecting society. When a person is driving a motorcycle, he'll wear a helmet to protect himself. He needs it, because if he falls off, he is going to have to protect his head. When an astronaut goes to outer space, he needs a suit. And when he's in outer space, that suit is protecting him from the air around him and giving him the oxygen he needs inside the suit, because once he takes the suit off, he's not going to live for very long. So the suit is not himself. It's bulky, it's clumsy. In fact, it's even it has a little bit of a feeling of claustrophobia perhaps for some people. But in order to exist on the moon, in outer space, he needs that, because that's what's going to protect him and allow him to live while he's on the moon or outer space. So too, when a person exists in this world, he exists as a soul within a body. He cannot live life in the physical world as a soul in the physical world, because the soul would expire. It is unable to exist. And just even as a simple example as a shoe for the foot, that the shoe protects the foot, and in fact the foot goes into the shoe in order to allow the person to walk on the ground. If he wants to walk barefoot, he could take a chance, but if his feet are a little bit too sensitive, and certainly from birth they generally will be, and he starts to walk all over the glass and the stones that are around on the ground, he's going to damage his feet, and in fact he might cause serious problems which will bring death to him because he didn't protect his feet. So we wear shoes in order to protect ourselves, and the body enters into the shoe much like the soul enters into the body. After a person dies, then this garment will be removed from him, and he'll be dressed in another garment, because again, this is the nature of life, of existence. In comparison to God, everything is garments. Everything has to have a garment, because God is the only being that exists in absolute infinity. He doesn't require anything to exist. But even souls require something to have an existence so that they don't revert back into the nothingness of God. And so therefore, when a person dies, his soul will be removed, his body will be removed from him, and he will be dressed in a pure and clean spiritual garment in the next world. As it's written in Zechariah Gimel Dalet, that's Perek Gimel Pasuk Dalet, chapter 3, verse 4. This is the angel who is talking to the Kohen Gadol, Joshua. Yeshua the Kohen Gadol, not to be confused with the Joshua who led the Israelites, the Jewish people into Israel. But he was the Kohen Gadol, and he had two sons, and they had done some things that were not appropriate, which had caused a blemish upon their father. And as a result of that, it wasn't appropriate that he would act as the Kohen Gadol, as the high priest. So the angel commands that the other angel beings should remove the soiled garments from upon him. What does it mean? It means that upon his soul, the soul is pure inside. But even here, there are certain garments that had overlaid themselves upon the soul, causing a blemish and a darkness and a dirt to the soul of the Kohen Gadol. And dress you in clean garments. And this is what's called the Chalukah de Rabbanan. The Chalukah de Rabbanan means the spiritual garment which every person has. And when he dies, this garment will be his main garment in the next world. It's called the Chalukah de Rabbanan. It's a ethereal garment, very spiritual garment, and it's known as the Chalukah de Rabbanan. We continue into in the next section where it says there 5. Now listen to this, even as it is, just as it is, that the garments of the body for a person, when a person wears natural garments, his pants, the shirt, the sweater, jersey, the suit, so a craftsman has to design it according to the form of the Eivarei HaGuf, of the limbs of a person. That's the same way that God made the body. Just as the tailor is going to design a garment for a person, it's going to fit him perfectly. He measures up the length of the arms and the length of the legs and the width of the body. He gets everything just perfect. And he wants these garments to fit the person absolutely perfect. It shouldn't be too tight. It shouldn't be too loose. It should fit and he should look good. So too when God created the human body, he created the human body to surround the exact replica of the soul. And let's be clear about that. The body is not the soul. But the soul has within it certain powers. And the powers within the soul, if you were to clothe them in a physical aspect, you would see them come out as a human body. Shehu levush hanefesh, that this is the garment of the soul. B'tavnis diyukan hanefesh, which is the format of the image of the soul, b'remach evarim, of the 248 limbs. V'lahem, and to them, shesar gidim, there are 365 sinews, hamekashrim es ha'evarim, which connect up all of the limbs. This is how God has designed the human body. There are 248 limbs, and there are 365 sinews, which are connecting those limbs up to allow the human body to move and talk, to see, to hear, to do all these things. Ulhamshich al yadam hadam, and it caused to bring on by them the blood, and it takes the blood and the life force from limb to limb, kedimion tinorot, like the format of pipes, like channels. So God has got the system worked out inside the body that's basically knitting the soul to the body, and it's made up of sinews, veins, arteries, which carry blood, and the blood moves about in the body, giving life to the body. Once that process stops, a person dies. So Hashem allows that the blood continues to move through all of these sinews, through all of the veins and the arteries, reaching all the parts of the body and allowing a person to move his body and do the different things that a person does with his body. Now after God created the body. Nafach bo nefesh chaya kulula meramach evarim v'ruchanim v'shesagdim. Afterwards, after he formed the body, he blew into the body the living soul, which consists of the 248 spiritual limbs and the 365 spiritual sinews. And then he clothes him into the 248 limbs, v'shesagedim, and the 365 sinews. Shel haguf, of the body, v'az poalim evarei hanefesh pulasam. And then the limbs of the soul begin to perform their particular duty. Al yedei hakelim, through the vessels, shehem evarei haguf, k'garzan b'yad hachoitzev bo. And now what happens is that the vessels are able to move the parts of the body just as an axe is in the hands of the woodcutter who uses it. And so too, you see, a woodcutter, he takes his axe and he moves it about as he wants to, and the axe does what it has to do. And wherever the axe hits on a tree, it causes a cut. And so too over here, the same thing happens. God has connected the soul with the body in a certain way, and so he has made it like a axe in the hands of the chopper. The chopper takes the axe and makes things happen. So too the soul connects to the body and allows the body to perform whatever it wants to. Amazingly, the soul and the body are so connected, so intertwined, that the moment a person even thinks about doing something, he's able to do it. Well, we know that there are some people in the world that for certain reasons the body is not functioning according to the way the brain would like it to. There we see that there is a disconnection of some kind happening. Not that we understand exactly what is going on, but something's disconnected somewhere. Of course, if it disconnects physically, there becomes a disconnection spiritually, and then even when a person desires spiritually that something should happen, it has no effect. A person, for example, cannot make things happen if the brain is not functioning correctly. But when the brain is functioning correctly and the body is healthy and all the parts of the body work together, then the moment the brain sends a signal to any part of the body performs its duty. There's no talking back, there's no questioning, there's no even time lapse. Things happen immediately. And in fact, the more that a person trains his body to work with his soul, the faster the reaction can be. Those who do martial arts and various other necessary skilled work with the body know well that as you train your body to act in a certain way, the more it gets trained, the faster it interacts. A person attacks somebody else, and a person is a martial artist, he understands exactly what to do immediately. But a person who's not as quick on the draw, and he doesn't understand all the things that can happen, and he's not trained well enough, so his body moves slower, and by the time his body moves, he's already knocked out. So the key, of course, is that in general, the soul is functioning behind the body and it makes it do its action almost immediately. But there are some times that it can happen even faster than immediately because there is an interaction between the soul and the body. Everything is intertwined. Now here's the proof for this. That a person's body, the limbs of the body, will not perform their duty unless the soul is in them. Ayin ro'ah, the eye sees, v'ozen shoma'as, the ear hears. U'behistalek hanefesh, when the soul leaves, chashku haro'os, then the sight becomes dimmed, ba'aruvos, inside their chambers, v'nisbatlu kol hachushim, and all of the senses are nullified, meremach evarim, from the 248 limbs. We're going to stop here. We're looking at paragraph 6 in Sfaria over here. And basically so far where we've got to now is to understand that God has created a body and he has placed the soul within the body. Obviously, Rabbi Chaim Vital is going to teach us something that's so important to understand about this. That these parts are connected with each other in such a way that when one defiles, causes a blemish in any way to one of the parts of the body, the Shasa, Gedim, the 365 sinews, he will cause a blemish that won't allow the body to work as it should. And if he doesn't perform one of those 248 mitzvot, which he's required to perform, there will be lacking something within his body. When his body is healthy, just like the person who is eating healthy, when the body is healthy together with the soul inside the body, a person will be able to achieve a closeness to Hashem. When a person puts stumbling blocks in his own way by not observing the mitzvot as he should, and by committing the averos when he shouldn't, he'll be causing a blemish that won't allow him to connect with God. Everything is perfectly created. Everything fits perfectly. As long as we do what we're supposed to do, we will maintain this relationship that we'll be able to connect with God and ultimately experience this Ruach Hakodesh, which Rabbi Chaim Vital brings for us in the beginning of the introduction, is ultimately the purpose of his book. It's to tell us that what God wants from us is to connect with him on the highest of levels. Of course, we observe the mitzvot because we're in a physical world. We perform acts of kindness to each other. We give charity. We do the actual physical mitzvot. It is this that will give us the opportunity to connect with Hashem. Even as we are a soul in a physical body, we will experience this wonderful connection. And this is what we strive for and desire. This is Eliyahu Shear again from Chesed Ve'emet. You can see my site at www.lovingkindness.co. Please feel free to be in touch about any areas that you'd love to discuss in terms of Torah, spirituality, and anything else that you have on your mind which pertains to something of this nature. If you've enjoyed the Shear, please do subscribe to my channel. Please share this video, like the video, post a positive comment. I'd really appreciate it. It makes all the difference to me and makes me feel that I want to do more and to give more of myself on further shiurim. So I hope you enjoyed the shiur, and I look forward to continuing soon in another shiur. Take care. Shalom, shalom.